Yes, that's good. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen DeMeulenaere. Can you hear me okay? That's one thing I better be sure of here. You're all right? I think we're all okay. I'm a director at the Coin Foundation and a founder of ComplementaryCurrency.org, which is a website that's been going for the last 20 years or more. And I've been involved in this space in nearly the last 30 years, starting off in Western Canada and then moving to work in Europe and Africa and of course Southeast Asia during a number of various monetary crises. Okay, and oops, there we go. Okay, so basically, as we've seen in 2008, we've had the biggest monetary crisis, the last largest monetary crisis. And the government then decided to print a great deal of money, as you can see from this part of the screen over here on the right-hand side. That is now going ballistic. And the response to that immediately was to create, Bitcoin. This is the first coin-based transaction on the Bitcoin network. And as you can see at the bottom there, the Times of London of 3rd January 2009, the Chancellor of the Bank of England is on the brink of second bailout for banks. And this is not an unusual thing. In fact, if we go back in time to the Great Depression when people were lined up like this, and this is something that we may be seeing in the coming months in the various places that we're living, cities and communities in America, in Canada, in Europe, and many other places developed their own local currencies in order to facilitate the exchange of goods and services between each other when the national currency, which is the currency issued by governments, ceased to function. If we go back another 10 years to that, we see an example of unlimited quantitative easing and what happens when governments do that. This is the Weimar Republic in Germany. And it takes a while to switch. Okay, right. So even governments can make money for it. And the response to that was similar as well. Cities across Germany, such as Bremen and Lübeck and many others, hundreds of others, created their own city-scale currencies during that time as well too. As you can see, these are from 1923 and 1921 and so on. So the creation of Bitcoin is a part of a grand history of the response that people take when governments are irresponsible about how they issue money into an economy. What this basically means then through this historical process is that fiat currency is dying. And now it's time for us to take money creation away from the government. And we now have the tools to do that, even better ones than we've had before in the previous period that I've been working at. So look at it. We could look at it this way: when someone is having a heart attack, which would you prefer? Would you prefer to have CPR, or would you prefer to have a blood transfusion? Now, with the situation right now, the government has chosen the option of the blood transfusion rather than the CPR. But as if you know anything about heart attacks, you'll know that CPR is the right way to go. It doesn't matter how much blood you put into the body. If the heart isn't pumping, then you're not going to be able to do what, it's not going to function properly. So with CPR is what an economy needs as well in order to get things happening again. And that's what we've done, we've seen over the last 20 years with complementary currencies. These are all examples here from different parts of the world: Bristol pound in England, the Hudson Valley in upstate New York, Nantes in France, Calgary in Canada, Maki in the Netherlands, Bartercard in Australia, Samadoun also in the Netherlands. And at the bottom here, we see the VIR. The VIR was created during the Great Depression in the 1930s, and it's grown into a bank some 90 years later today. It's still very active in Switzerland, And some 10 to 20% of all small and medium enterprises in Switzerland are members of VIR, where they use a local internal currency, a network currency, to exchange their goods and services between each other. So you can see the early logo where it says Wirtschaftsring of Zurich on the left-hand side, and then they removed that as they became more and more mainstream over time. So why us? Why this message now? Why is this coming back again? Well, the people in you who are paying attention to this workshop right now or this presentation are the people who are active. You're learning about this, you're out in front. We also need to be voting with our feet in the direction that we want to be going in, and to be reallocating our assets and moving our wealth and designing new monetary systems. And we need to be doing this now. It's really, really important. So what I do then is work with the Coin Foundation at coin.org, and we are assisting many different communities around the world and cities to implement complementary currency systems. These systems take many different forms. They can be issued in the form of credit that circulates between each other, and no interest is charged on this credit, so it's accessible to everyone. Or it can be similar to a cryptocurrency where you would purchase it with fiat money, and then you can cash out at the end, something like that. And there are time banks, of course, you may have heard of, that exchange units of time between each other instead of being connected with fiat money. So what we think of complementary currencies then is seeing them as a complement to the yang currencies that we are mostly familiar with today. Yang currencies are scarce currency. They induce competition between people in order to repay the loans, which is how the money is issued into the economy. They generally function in a way that drives the economy forward. However, there are currencies that we could consider to be yin currencies, where they're sufficient in supply, they're issued freely to people so that they induce cooperation and circulation rather than hoarding and competition. So this is a model that was developed by Professor Bernard Lietaer, who's written a number of books that I will present at the end of the presentation. So, but however, something has actually kind of gone wrong with cryptocurrencies. Now, I'm not a cryptocurrency hater. I have a fair bit myself. I've been involved in the space for quite a long time. But Bitcoin was created as proof that we can create our own money and that it can be the most powerful currency in the world. But it's just one design. As you know, there are other cryptocurrencies, of course, but there's room for many, many other designs of cryptocurrencies that facilitate circulation. So the purpose in all of this is not to have an ICO to get rich and drive our Lambo around or go to cool crypto conferences and neat places and such, but it's to continue the historical process of decentralization. So living here in Bali provides us with a really great example of that, because there's a lot of research that discusses the role that these Chinese coins have played in creating the vibrant society in Bali. Each local banjar taxed the people using these coins, which were in hugely abundant supply. It was not limited at all. There are gazillions of these all around Bali. And each banjar or traditional government used them to finance their ceremonies and their arts and creativity. And this really is used as an example quite often of what can happen in a radically decentralized society. Okay. And lastly then, these are 3 books here. I shared People-Powered Money in the Telegram group, so you can check that out, search for it in the Telegram group. It's probably a few hundred messages up now. And also Rethinking Money and the Future of Money are also highly recommended books that discuss the history and the purpose of what we're doing with complementary currencies and what we should be doing with cryptocurrencies as well. So I think I've also gone quite quickly through this. So I'd like to stop there and go back to my, seeing if you have any questions, and we can come back to my presentation from there. Thank you very much.
Yes, I have a question. I'd love to get your insight on why you think Bitcoin is flawed, so to speak, economically. If you do, like, what are the elements that make it so? And then what are some ways that we can do it better, in your opinion?
Right. Well, what we've always tried to do is separate the function of the store of value from the medium of exchange. So Bitcoin initially we were hoping it could be both, that it could both function as a currency and as a store of value. But with the later generation cryptocurrencies that have come out, we see that Bitcoin functions best as a store of value. It's depreciating, in volume as time goes on, appreciating in value, as we've also noticed as well too, at certain times in its history. Hopefully we're coming back to that time as well too, with the halvening, which is coming up in a week or so. So yeah, it's not the kind of currency of abundance that we really need to facilitate the full inclusion of people to finance the SDG gap, the funding that's needed to meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals and things like that. It would be a currency that could be pegged to Bitcoin, perhaps, but Bitcoin itself is probably not the way to go. So we're seeing Ethereum really step in there. If you follow Ethereum closely, and the developments going on in the social impact space within Ethereum and Gitcoin and such, which are quite enormous.
Hey, Stephen. I'm curious about, I really like your yin and yang currency analogy. Like, do you know of like a success case for mutual credit? Like, I hear the Bali example, but is there something else you know?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I had that in my presentation there. So you could look at the Bristol pound as an example, although it's not mutual credit.
Mm-hmm.
Just here, I'll go back to the here, and then it's a little bit tricky to get. So this one here, the Hudson Valley Current, are you able to see that?
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yep, that's so Bristol Pound is not a mutual credit system. You buy that with British pounds, and you can hold on to them or spend them, and the businesses can use them as payment of taxes in the city of Bristol. But the Hudson Valley Current, Sonance, the Calgary Dollars, Mackey, Salmon and Veer all use mutual credit methods of issuance. So it's very easy for individuals and businesses to participate without having to have money in advance.
Thank you. Well, I also asked because a project that I'm working on is looking at addressing the SDG goal of like climate change with using mutual credit. Like, I mean, we have been talking about collaboration with Holochain for some time now, and one thing that I really wanted to embed is recognizing like temperature of capital, such that we know that it's not all capital is not measured equal. Like there are capital that are more heating towards the planet than not. But at the same time, also leveling the playing field for the bigger and smaller actors, because you would probably have a bigger climate debt as a bigger actor. So like that's why I'm wondering, like, you know, if you have any like thoughts about like what next, like what can we do next when it comes to SDG goals and all that.
Well, there's a project that I'm supporting very much, which is called grassroots economics, or the Bangla Pesa project in Kenya, which is funded in part by the Red Cross with some support from Consensus as well. They started off using a mutual credit system, but have actually started some other currencies alongside of it. So what I'm not suggesting is that we replace Bitcoin or replace Bitcoin at all. I mean, Bitcoin is an excellent complement to what's happening with fiat currency. And mutual credit is an excellent complement to what's happening with Bitcoin and with fiat currency as well too. And time banks are actually an excellent complement to those. So I'm definitely 100% agnostic. And I believe that the type of currency determines the type of social relations that will happen using that currency, that particular currency. So if you're finding that the mutual credit system is working for some people in your network, but not working for others, then you might try introducing another one and seeing if that helps to achieve the kinds of outcomes that you want to have. And that's what we do with Coin Foundation. We have workshops together with our clients to co-design the currency rather than developing a tokenomics and handing it to them. Actually, we've done that in some cases, but for the most part, we get together with our clients and do a workshop together to really drill down into all of the various incentives that they would like to encourage using a complementary currency, and then developing models around that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Co-designing. It did like stretch my mind a little bit to think of that, like we'll just keep adding like new currency, like when something is insufficient.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe some will last only for a certain period of time. In the past, a number of mutual credit currencies don't become as popular, or aren't as popular anymore because the economy is already doing well, so people generally start to forget about them. But that was the past. That was in the 80s and the 90s. As you know, things have become much, much worse over then. And so it's becoming important for us to have a more, constantly running parallel or competitive currency to fiat. And I think that's what we're going to be seeing going forward, is a lot more cities and regions and communities and neighborhoods issuing their own forms of money. And I work both with crypto-based as well as, or blockchain-based cryptocurrencies, as well as non-blockchain-based digital currencies as well in this, because we need to find the right tool and the right design that works for the community rather than getting too technical about it. Any other questions? I absolutely agree with what Riki was saying in the chat, that diversity for a thriving ecosystem, and that we've got to get rid of any type of mono money. Absolutely. When I was in East Timor, actually, as an example, I was with the UN and in this little enclave in Eastern Indonesia. And when I was there were businesses from Hong Kong that had opened up in East Timor, and there were businesses from Singapore and from the Philippines and Thailand and Indonesia, and they all used their own currencies. So although we were being paid in the US dollar, which was the currency of the United Nations, we would get a better deal if we converted that currency into Hong Kong dollars and took a taxi. And they actually had these Hong Kong taxis in Dili. Or if we went to the Thai restaurant, we paid less if we used Thai baht, because it made it easier for the owner of that business to repatriate that money and then buy more stock or hire people. So in Dili in around 2000, 2001, there were like 7 or 8 currencies circulating around, and it functioned very, very well. So I think we might think that it would be hard for people to deal with more than one currency, but more and more as younger people, we are becoming very, very used to that with our air miles and various loyalty points and so on that we're using.
Very cool. Stephen, and I have a question. This is Lily.
Yes, hi Lily.
Hi. I'm also based partially in Bali as well, and the other half
Great.
of my time is in China. And I would really love to see a Bali, like a Trihita Karana currency, you know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking about it for a long time, and I think that the time is coming again to bring that back, especially with the situation like we're going to be seeing with the economy here. Hopefully, what it means is that people will be moving away from the tourism sector and engaging in other economic activities that bring more resilience to Bali, because as you know, it's being impacted so heavily right now.
Yes, we have friends that's supporting local artistry community, you know, with like weaving and all the sculpture and stuff like that. And we also are setting up a school there by the airport. I mean, to the east of the airport, called the Kura Kura Island. So we're linking
Oh, great.
we're linking Tsinghua University from China has set up a center there. So it's kind of a link between the Chinese and the Indonesian, you know, in Bali. So I'm involved with that project, and I would love to envision some sort of financial tool or you know, mechanism to allow you know, the China of the world and then the South Asia of the world can, you know, connect it a little better, because I feel the pain of the divide, right? Digital divide and cultural divide now, everything divide. So any thoughts on that, like linking, you know, the China world and with the Asia and the rest of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to talk with you about it. And I think actually we met last year in Ubud at a gathering that was hosted at,
Maybe.
escaping my mind at the moment. But yeah, I'll we can exchange contacts after this and talk more about it. And there's also the Bali Design Center that's being started up nearby to there. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's going to be a very large makerspace that's in development now. And so I'd like to connect you with them as well too. And then we can see. But I think well, I think we're getting there. More and more people are starting to realize that there's a lot of you know, benefit in that, in doing these kinds of things. And so I think that we're going to be seeing a lot more support, and we definitely have the technology for doing that now. So great.
Oh, at a room, right? I think it was at a room.
Yeah, that's right. And darn, it's escaping my name right. Oh, Cyan House. We had lunch at Cyan House, I believe, with a large group of people.
With the Solomon group. Yes.
Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. Yep, cool. So does anyone else have any questions for the last 5 minutes of the session? And Vienna, were you also looking to do a complementary currency in the Bay Area? Because there is one called Berkeley Bread. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, or even if it's still running at the moment. But there have been quite a lot of initiatives in San Francisco and around with complementary currencies over the past couple decades.
What do you say, Berkeley Bread?
Yes, that's right, Berkeley Bread. It's called in Berkeley itself.
Yeah, well, I'll have to say that looking into complementary currency is actually newer to me, given that like it's more that we started with a basis that we want to address climate change by having an alternative financial system that is modeled more closely like the kidney exchange market. And looking at holochain as a way to get there. Now then, we also had to figure out how do we have sense-making mechanism that gets community to participate in like kind of not exactly quantifying, but at least like getting a sense of like if the economy activity that they are participating is heating up the planet or cooling. That was why I started looking into mutual credit. Kind of like my background was actually more in like an alternative distributed ledger technology. Actually, our team was getting to the same goal that Holochain was at, but I left that the startup to work on the climate change project instead. So yeah, so now I'm finally like tuning into this world of like, well, all these people back then, like you say, prior to blockchain, there were already people looking at like all these currencies. So that's where I'm at.
Oh, that's great. I know the team from Holochain really well, Arthur Brock and so on. Arthur's
Yeah.
been also in this area for a long time and also has a lot of experience with mutual credit systems. And they really took
Yes.
their time to design Holo from, I mean, I'm very familiar with Scepter and all the foundational parts of Holochain.
Yeah, when we were in San Francisco, we used to visit one another's house, if you will. Like at one point, they had a hacker house in San Francisco, so it was great. At the same time, I'm also thinking about climate change these days as more of a time-sensitive crisis, just as COVID is. So, meaning like the ability to get community to address it sooner than later actually should be programmed in as something that is more valuable. So like I guess like what I'm saying is also how can we integrate not just the traditional currency design school, but also like how financial derivatives market has so successfully coordinated like action across various time scale, like and in a way that for now is seems to be unbeatable. And how when we start introducing more physics like data, like the climate related ones, but also like what Nora Bateson has been talking about when it comes to relational ecosystemic health, like how can this all be put in together? That's what I'm looking at right now. And the team that I was working with at Stanford is called 0 Degree Project. And I think Eric and Arthur is also familiar with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's really great. That's really great. In the Ethereum community, there's also a lot of groups that I've come into contact with lately that are working really hard on this. Consensus recently had their decentralized blockchain for social impact coalition hackathon that had many different projects targeting in that. So I think that's how we're eventually going to develop the winning formula, for dealing with this. And with crypto, I think we really can develop the kind of incentives that will drive people towards it.
Yeah, and thanks to your inspiration today, I got an idea that if this currency doesn't work, you design another. Well, in my case, I'm actually thinking of more of an index that starts cataloging all these different efforts in terms of their rate of innovation, because what I care most about is not like where people start, but how fast are they changing. So I'm gonna keep creating indexes is what I got out of today.
Absolutely. It's just the way it goes. I have to say, I don't have 100% success rate myself. I've learned a lot over the years, and sometimes things have shown a lot of promise and some things have not worked out so well. But I remain optimistic that we'll eventually find a variety of models that are going to work for for a lot of people. So I think it's yeah, it's good just to go out there and keep going. So thanks very much, everyone. Thank you for attending and for your questions. And it's 4:30, so I think it's time for me to be polite and give up my spot here to the next speaker. So I think that Michael or Paul will let the next speaker take over, and I stop my sharing, and I think that's all I need to do. So thanks very much, everyone. Be in touch.